Let us start with chapter 1 of new NCERT Social Science, that is natural resources and their use. So concerned social scientists are clear on what we need to do. We must move towards a generative or regenerative economy, an economy that operates in harmony with nature, repurposing used resources, minimizing waste, and replenishing depleted resources. We must return to the innate wisdom of nature herself and the ultimate regenerator and recycler of all resources. So, the whole summarized thing is that we have to use our resources wisely, and in this chapter, we are primarily going to study about natural resources and their proper use, and we'll study in detail about the reason why we give so much importance to the natural resources, without which it is difficult for our lives. So, in this, we'll give a quick NCERT reading as well as make a quick short notes. So, in this chapter, we'll be dealing with these three main questions, that is, how do we categorize natural resources, and what is the connection between the natural resources and the different aspects of life, and what are the implications, that is, problems of unsustainable use or overexploitation of natural resources. Why is it important to use the natural resources judiciously? So, starting with, when does nature become a resource? So, one of the meanings of the word nature is the totality of life and non-life forms that are part of our environment but have not been created by humans. So, one of the meaning of nature is the totality of life and non-life forms that are part of our environment but it is not created by humans. So, when we have to say about nature in detail, first we will have to remember that nature is the totality. It is the totality of life and non-life forms that are part of our environment. So it has both biotic and non-biotic forms of life and are a part of our environment, but it is important to remember that it is not created by humans. So we have not made nature. It is existent and we are not involved in its creation. So when humans use these for their sustenance and or create new things from them for their use, so we humans basically will sustain on nature and also create new things from it. And these elements of nature become resources. So when humans use these for their sustenance, that is for their survival, or create new things from them for the consumption, then these elements of nature become resource. So we are studying about how nature will become a resource. So nature is totality of both biotic, that is life, and abiotic, that is non-living organisms, and it is not created by humans. But how is nature becoming a resource? So nature will become a resource when we utilize it for our living and also create new things out of it. So for example, if you're making wood, it is stated here, if you convert the wood into furniture, then this particular tree will become a resource because it is utilized by us for our living. So we have created something new from which is already there. So tree is a natural thing. So when you make wood out of it, then wood is the resource. So this is how nature will get converted into becoming a resource. So often these entities are not easily accessible. So for example, there may be petroleum in places deep under the ocean that we do not have the technology to access, or the extraction may cost too high. It is not economically possible, or it may be culturally unacceptable by like cutting the trees in sacred groves. So for an entity to be called as a resource, it should be accessible and its exploitation should be economically feasible and culturally acceptable. So basically, if you wanted to take something from nature as a resource, it is important to remember that it should be easily accessible. So some petrol is deep under the ocean, so we usually don't go there because either it is not economically possible, or it is a very lengthy process, or we don't have that much techniques to do so. So when does something become a resource? So something will become a resource when its extraction is economically feasible. That is, it is not too costly, it is economically feasible. It should be economically feasible as the first point. The second point is it should be culturally accepted by people. So it should not have any religious importance, and also it should be technologically accessible to us. So we should have the techniques to extract it. So these are the three main things. That is, a resource should be that it should be economically, it should not be too high, it should be affordable, and it should be culturally accepted, and we should have the techniques or the technology to extract that particular resource. So this is the proper definition of a resource. So a resource is the one which we can extract, which is technologically acceptable, and its exploitation should be economically feasible and culturally acceptable. Usually the word exploitation has a negative connotation. So usually when we hear the word exploitation, we think in a negative sense. But in this context, we use it here, it means extraction or utilization or the consumption of natural resources. So in this particular statement, exploitation in the sense, it's not in a negative sense. They are trying to say that in place of extraction, utilization or consumption, that is, the use of that particular thing should be economically feasible, is what they wanted to tell. The earth has treasures, many of which are formed over millions of years. So the earth has many treasures, but it takes millions of years for their formation. Even for a piece of soil to form, it takes a lot of many millions of years. Like rock should break, weathering should happen, and then the soil will be formed. So in the same way, the earth has many treasures, like we have many mines and petroleum and many more, and the formation of those will take millions of years, and which humans have taken and learned to use. So this includes the most obvious ones like the water, air, soil, and also the non-obvious ones like coal, petroleum, precious stones, metal ores, and many more. So the resources which we usually think are water, air, and soil, and also the coal, petroleum, and precious stones are also resources. So in short, we apply the term natural resources to materials and substances that which occur in nature and are valuable to humans. So basically these are the three important points for something to be called as a resource. But in simple terms, if you wanted to say what is natural resources, we can simply say that these are the substances that occur in nature and which are valuable to humans, that they make our lives more easier, or they are the things which make us live. So first we'll be studying about the categories of natural resources. So in science, we learn the usefulness of categorization and naming. So we use some shared characteristics or criteria when we categorize ideas or things. So when you wanted to classify things, you usually apply some criteria. That is, on what basis do you actually classify the things? So here in the same way, for the natural resources also, we should have some category. So we name the categories so that we can refer to them with just one word or a short phrase. So when these names or meanings are shared among groups of people, it helps us to study a set of ideas or things without needing to actually tell them the whole thing each and every time. So when we say a simple thing, they'll understand that this is what they are referring to. So we can communicate more effectively too. So in earlier classes, you learned about living and non-living things. Living in the sense biotic and non-living in the sense abiotic, which together will form an environment. So as soon as you hear these words, you know what they actually mean. So this is the simple examples of categories. So it is important to categorize, because when someone says living, then you don't have to say all the characteristics of living things and all those things, because you know what it actually means. So that is why categorization is very important. So we do the same with natural resources as well. So one of the ways we could categorize natural resources is based on the uses we put them into, which are essential for our life, source for materials, and sources for energy. So we'll categorize them based on the uses we put them to. So in this, how do we categorize? Categorization of resources. How is it done? It is done based on their use. It is done based on their use. So first is the resources which are essential for life. So first category is the resources which are essential for life. So life could not exist on earth without the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat. So we take these from the atmosphere, the rivers, ponds, and through the cultivation of soil and other living things. So we cannot make the air we breathe, the water we drink, or the soil which gives us food. So the very first criteria of resources is the resources which are essential for our existence, essential for our life. So we already know that air, water, and food are essential for any person to live, without which we cannot expect our life. So these are the resources essential for life, and obviously a resource in the sense it is what we convert nature into what we utilize. So we cannot create air, water, or soil. So these are the resources. They became resources because air we breathe, water we drink, and the soil will give us food. So the next category is resources for materials. So the next second category is resources for materials. So human beings create physical objects out of nature's gifts. We make them for our utility or to create things of beauty that enrich our lives and those of others. So a piece of wood can be transformed into a chair and also carved into a statue. So India's geographical diversity provides us with a wide variety of natural resources, from wood to marble and coal to gold. So we make many things out of what the natural supplies we get. So here they have exampled us about the piece of wood, wood to marble, and coal to gold. So all these things are resources because we utilize them. So gold is used for jewelry and for investment purposes and many more things, and wood for furniture, marble for flooring, and coal for lighting. So there are many things. Coal is used for electricity. So all these are resources which are used as materials. So the nature's mines and everything will do, and we extract gold and wood by cutting the trees and making furniture. So this is the second category, that is resources for materials. And the third category, that is resources for energy. So energy is a cornerstone of modern living. So electricity for our buildings, transportation, and all types of production process. So this is resources for energy. We all know that energy is the cornerstone. It is very important for modern living. Without energy, it is very difficult to expect our life, because electricity, without that, we can't even imagine a single day of our life. for our buildings, transportation, and all types of production processes. So this energy comes from diverse natural sources. So we get energy from various sources. Primarily we get it from coal, but now we are trying to research on various modes like water, petroleum, natural gas, sunlight, and sunlight in the sense solar. So it is becoming popular nowadays. So the third category is the resources for energy. So we use resources for energy production. So the resources used are coal, water, petroleum, natural gas, sunlight, wind, and many more. Next classification is so with this we have completed the classification based on the uses, how we utilize the natural resources. So these are the three based on the categorization of the use of the resources. So next we will be studying the next categorization, that is the renewable and non-renewable resources. So the second way of categorizing natural resources could be based on whether they are renewable or not. So a general principle of nature is that it functions in a restorative and regenerative way. So suppose if a particular land has completely dried up, either it is due to leaving it without farming or any other reasons. So if you leave that land for a long duration of time, you can see that it will start restoring itself. So the soil will become fertile and trees will start growing. So it may take millions of years, but it still is evident. We can see that the land is improving. So this is the restoration ability or the regenerative ability of nature. So restoration is a process of returning something to its original healthy state if it has been degraded or it is damaged. So restoration is the process of returning something to its original healthy state from its degraded state. So nature will heal, renew, and maintain herself over a period of time. So a cut on your skin will normally heal. So if a small scratch or something will happen on your hand, it will obviously heal after some days. So in the same way, nature also has the healing feature. So a forest recovers after a wildfire. So in the same way, a forest will also recover from a wildfire. So regeneration goes beyond restoration. So here they are writing that regeneration goes beyond restoration. It is the nature's ability to create new life and conditions for thriving. So there is a difference between restoration and regeneration. So restoration in the sense something which is degraded will be converted into its original healthy state, while regeneration goes beyond the restoration. That is, it is about nature's ability to create new life and conditions for thriving. So whatever is damaged will be restored in the restoration. Regeneration in the sense new life will be created. So we plant trees in areas that may have lost them on account of human interventions like clearing forests for housing and many other things. So planting the types of trees that were originally growing there will restore the ecosystem. The tree will provide food and shelter for birds, squirrels, and other creatures, enabling life to return. So nature works in cycles where there is no waste. Let's take a forest. Let's say a tree falls in the forest. It will decompose with bacteria, fungi, and insects feeding on it, and the trees become part of soil, enriching it. So new trees and plants grow from seeds. So eventually, some will fall and the cycle will start again. So these are the examples of nature's principle of restoration and regeneration in practice. So here they are saying that if suppose a tree or any other plant will die, so obviously it will decay, or let's say animals, they will also die, and obviously they'll be mixed up in the soil and they'll form layers and layers of soil, and These will be decomposed with the help of bacteria, fungi, and insects feeding on these dead and decayed matter. And then this, whatever is decomposed, acts as a fertilizer because the soil will become more fertile because of the minerals and nutrients present in it, and it will aid for the growth of the tree. And thereafter the cycle will again continue. So on this tree there will be many plants living, many animals will be living on this tree. So the cycle will keep on continuing one after the other, and this shows the nature's principle of restoration and regeneration in practice. So this is a complete cycle which is happening in our nature, and there will be no waste happening anywhere. So first is the renewable resources. So renewable resources exhibit these characteristics over time. So most of India have abundant sunshine. So in natural course, rivers are fed regularly by rain and melting glaciers, forests renew themselves, soil replenishes itself through natural processes, and so on. Solar energy, wind energy, energy from flowing water, and timber from forests are renewable sources as long as we are able to manage them in a sustainable manner. So all these, that is solar energy, wind energy, energy from flowing water, all are coming under renewable resources as long as we are able to manage them in a sustainable way. However, for them to remain renewable there in a condition, the natural rhythm of restoration and regeneration must not be interfered. So if we harvest timber faster than the forest can grow trees, then we will eventually deplete the forest. So if you use the timber more than the restoration rate, so whatever you're cutting down should be less, or it should be equal to the restoration rate. If you're using it up more than the restoration rate, then it will become imbalanced, and that will deplete the forest. So scientists have shown that through irresponsible human actions, many of the nature cycles have been intervened. A combination of several factors interacting, fossil fuel driven industrialization and the cutting down of forests for agriculture and other purposes are two of them, has led to the rising temperatures that we are experiencing on account of this. So the first reason is that it is important to note that fossil fuel driven industrialization, and the second thing is cutting down of forests for agricultural purposes. So this has created imbalance, due to which we are experiencing high temperatures, and also the glaciers in the Himalayas are melting at a faster rate than it can be replenished with precipitation. Precipitation in the sense it is rainfall, to say in common words. So this has implications on water scarcity. Implications in the sense it has created imbalance or problems for population living in plains dependent on the water tower. So basically, when glaciers will melt, it is a source of rivers. So glaciers are melting more at the faster rate than the precipitation can replace them. So this is why it has created problems for people living or dependent in the plains dependent, which are living in plains dependent on the water tower. So for summarizing this whole thing, so we need industries to produce the goods we consume. The process of also creates wastes that are frequently discharged into rivers and other water bodies. Often, these wastes cannot decay to become the food of some life forms. So instead, it leads to a imbalance in nature's cycle of restoration and regeneration, leading to a situation where river becomes poisonous and cannot support life. So obviously we need the industries to produce the goods we consume. But this problem also creates waste. So obviously industries will release out wastes, and they obviously discharge them into the rivers and other water bodies. So when it is mixed up in rivers, then it becomes poisonous even to the water bodies and also people who are living on the or are using these rivers for their water needs. So it cannot support life and becomes poisonous. The river will become poisonous. So to summarize the renewable resources, so the category that is renewable resources, we can say that these are the natural resources. These are the natural resources that can replenish themselves. That is, they can replenish themselves naturally over time. So it may take some long duration, but they can replenish themselves either through natural processes or by human intervention, but are not depleted. So renewable resources basically are not depleted when they are used. So light, water, so however you use, they are mostly not depleted until and unless we are using them without any proper knowledge or any thought about our future generations. It is important for us to use the resources sustainably so that it is beneficial for us as well as for our future generations. So the next category is the non-renewable resources. So the non-renewable resources are created over long periods. So these are also created over long periods, but they cannot be replenished at the rate we use them. So these cannot be replenished. For example, fossil fuels, coal and petroleum, and minerals and metals like iron, copper, and gold are non-renewable resources. So iron, copper, and gold are the non-renewable resources. And India has significant quantities of coal reserves. So here there is a difference, that is renewable resources that can replenish themselves, but non-renewable in the sense they cannot be replenished at the rate we use them up. And India has significant quantities of coal reserves. So we mine coal to meet our growing needs for energy, but it has been estimated that coal reserves in India may last only another 50 years. And the demand for electricity has been increasing as population expands and development work accelerates. So till more sustainable options become available widely, so we need to use coal. We have to be very judicious when we are using it. So obviously the alternatives are starting to come for the usage of coal for energy, because we are already started to use solar for electricity purposes, and we are going to minimize the use of coal as fast as possible because the reserves are depleting day by day, and it may only last for another 50 years if we use it in the same rate as we are using it for now. So it is important to remember that renewable in the sense they can replenish themselves, but non-renewable are those which can not be replenished at the rate we use them up, because it takes billions of years for the formation of these non-renewable resources by nature. So the distribution of natural resources and its implications, the next part. So in this first part we'll wind up our chapter until here. So until now we have studied what is nature. It is a totality of life that is living and non-living, and it is not created by humans. So anything which is natural or nature should be converted into resource. It will convert it into resource only when we use them for our living or we make anything out of it, we create anything out of it, then the natural thing will become a resource. And the resource should be economically feasible, culturally acceptable, and it should be technologically accessible. Then only it will become a resource. And resources can be categorized based on various categories. So the first is based on how we use them. So resources can be classified based on the resources for life, resources for materials, and resources for energy. And there is a difference between restoration and regeneration. Restoration in the sense something which is already existed but it was damaged, then it will be restored. That is restorative. Regeneration in the sense it will create new life. And there is a cycle in nature where there will be no wastage. And the second thing is that fossil fuel driven industries and agriculture have created imbalance due to which they are increasing temperatures and the glaciers are also melting, not which cannot be balanced with the precipitation rate. And the next categorization of the resources is the renewable and non-renewable resources. Renewable resources are resources that can replenish themselves over a period of time naturally, either with natural process or by human intervention. Non-renewable resources cannot be replenished at the rate of their own use because it takes billions or millions of years for their formation. So with this, we'll end up this chapter or wind up until this in this part, and the next part we'll be completing this chapter.